Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into the world of a truly unique and powerful deity, Kamakya. You've shared some fascinating sources with us, and our mission really is to unpack the core insights they offer. We're going to explore who she is, her profound significance, the ancient stories linked to her, her specific iconography, and the unique methods associated with her worship. Think of this as your direct path, sort of a shortcut to a richer, layered understanding of this incredible figure.
And stepping into the material you've provided, yeah, it's immediately clear. We're looking at a deity with incredible depth, so many layers of understanding here. It paints a picture of a figure that is both ancient, powerful, and absolutely central to a very specific spiritual path.
Okay, let's dive in then. The material immediately flags Kamakya as, well, foundational and quite distinct. What stands out about her identity right away from the insights you've pulled?
Well, what's particularly striking is her status as one of the original Shakti Pithas, these really sacred pilgrimage sites.
Right, linked to the goddess Shakti.
Exactly. And the Pitha, known as Kamarupa, where the main temple is, it's highlighted as one of the original four. And uniquely, it's been continuously worshipped since, well, ancient times, long before the list of Pithas grew much larger later on.
And her identity, it seems like it's understood in different ways, depending on the text or maybe the tradition.
Precisely. That's what we see. Practitioners, scholars, they've related to her in various ways across different traditions and eras. So early references, particularly in what's sometimes called the Western transmission of contras, those complex spiritual practices and texts, they might identify her as Kubjika, seen as a primary deity there. But then later texts, like the Kalika Purana, they equate her with really powerful forms like Kali and Chandi.
Okay.
And the Yogini Tantra connects her to Chipura Sundari, specifically mentioning her delightful form as Kameshwari. And the Kamakya Tantra itself describes a very specific iconography. 6 heads, 12 arms. Very detailed.
Wow. Okay, so a multitude of forms, different names.
Yes, and here's one of the deepest insights, I think. Despite all these specific forms, the material really emphasizes that at the absolute heart of Kamakya is Nirakara.
Formlessness.
Formlessness, exactly. She is the Adi Shakti, the absolute primordial power, incredibly raw, ancient, understood to exist even before the Tantra Shastras were, written down.
Yeah.
The core idea is she's pure potential. She can take any shape or form.
And the physical location itself, the Yoni Pitha, that holds a specific significance tied directly to this identity, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It connects strongly to the concept of the Yoni Pitha.
Yep.
It's believed to be where the yoni, the divine female organ of the goddess Sati, fell during that cosmic event.
Yeah.
And the material links this directly to the power of creation, that from Kamakya, everything can be created or manifested. It's the seed of origin.
This centrality, this connection to creation, it sounds like it makes her particularly important for specific types of spiritual practices.
Absolutely, yes. Because she is the source, the ultimate creative principle. She's a highly revered Pitha for Devi Upasana, the worship of the Divine Mother, especially within the Tantra Marga, the path of Tantra. And the material specifically highlights her primacy for the Kula and Vamachara traditions.
The left-hand path, sometimes called that.
Right, sometimes referred to as the left-hand path. She's described as the absolute queen, the primordial goddess for this specific approach. And the reason she's categorized in different ways as Kali, Tara, Tripura Sundari, it's because her formless nature means she can be approached through the lens of any of these powerful energies. The material even notes that some of her core mantras use ancient Tara bijas, seed sounds associated with Tara.
Fascinating. Okay, the material you shared also gets into her iconography. Describes her visual representation, sounds incredibly rich, symbolic. What does this depiction tell us?
Oh, the iconography is indeed beautiful, and it's packed with deep meaning. Typically, she's shown sitting on a lotus.
Right.
And this lotus emerges from a white Shiva, sometimes described like a Pretha or sort of a corpse-like figure, and he, in turn, sits on a lion.
Okay.
So the insights from the material explain these mounts, these vahanas. The lion is identified with Vishnu, the white Shiva figure with Mahadev, and the lotus with Brahma.
So wait, the major deities of the Hindu pantheon, they're her vehicles, her mounts. That feels like an incredibly powerful statement about her supremacy.
It is. It's a profound statement. The understanding presented is that these major cosmic principles, they became her vehicles because her power is just so intense, so magnificent. Nothing else in the universe could contain or support her directly. She embodies these extreme dualities simultaneously, Ugra, fierce, and Somya, gentle.
Right.
Heavy and lighter than air, vast and tiny. Everything is contained within her being. It's quite something.
And this complex iconography isn't just symbolic, is it? The material suggests it's linked to the physical place, the mountain itself.
This is where it gets really interesting. It connects the physical site directly to the spiritual understanding. The material indicates that these three forms, the lion, Vishnu, the white Shiva, Mahadev, and the lotus, Brahma, they are the very substance of the Nilakal Parvata.
The mountain where the temple stands.
Exactly. So stepping onto the mountain is seen as, well, stepping onto the cosmic principles themselves. It embodies the presence of all deities there. And there are also these more esoteric descriptions where a form of Shiva is depicted holding the goddess's feet, symbolizing how the mountain itself, understood as a manifestation of Shiva, Bhava, is supporting her presence, holding her.
Wow. Okay, and the material also offers this really fascinating interpretation of the iconography, sitting on these three vahanas as a kind of path, a path for the spiritual seeker, the sadhaka. How does that work?
Yes, this is a key insight into the sort of the tantric approach associated with Kamakya.
Yeah.
One interpretation presented connects these vehicles, these mounts, to the sadhaka's spiritual journey. So the lion, representing Vishnu, signifies the stage of working for dharma, righteousness, acting in the world with courage, fearlessness.
Okay, so establishing that foundation first.
Yeah.
Right, action, courage.
Yes. Then the white Shiva figure, the Pitha, represents the next stage, becoming completely detached from the world and its results.
Oh, detachment.
Complete detachment.
Yeah.
After transcending the attachment to, dharmic activities and their outcomes, you reach a state of non-attachment. And in that state, a new beginning, a true spiritual journey starts, symbolized by the lotus blooming from the navel.
Like a new creation.
Exactly. A new, pure creation emerging from that detachment. It's only then, beyond these stages of worldly action and the subsequent detachment, that Kamakya is understood to truly manifest in the Upasaka's life. So this path, traversing the stages represented by the lion and the Pitha, that's how she actually comes into one's being, into one's consciousness. Realizing the deity is seen as distinct from, just doing rituals or visiting the site. It's an internal journey mirrored externally.
This sounds like a really powerful path laid out right there in the imagery itself. Speaking of paths, the material shares a specific legend, the story of Rishi Vashishta, that sheds more light on her preferred path, particularly that Vamachara aspect we touched on earlier.
Oh yes, this story. It's found in older tantric texts, and it's absolutely central to understanding why Vamachara is so associated with Kamakya. It tells of the great sage Vashishta, who worshipped in Kamakya for 1,000 years using traditional Vedic methods.
1,000 years!
Yeah, 1,000 years. But without achieving any significant results, he was getting frustrated. And then he heard this divine voice instructing him that his method was wrong and that you should go to China.
China, as in modern China.
Well, China is often used historically in these texts to refer to regions like Tibet or areas along the Himalayas where different, sometimes non-Vedic spiritual practices were known.
Okay, got it. So he goes there and encounters a radically different approach.
Precisely. He met a figure described as Buddha Rupan Narayan. And this figure was practicing in a way that included elements considered completely unacceptable, even polluting, in conventional Vedic tradition.
Like what?
Things like the consumption of meat, alcohol, and the presence of women actively involved in the ritual context. Vashishta was initially furious. He saw it purely as hedonism, as degradation.
But I assume there was a deeper explanation.
Yes, and this dialogue between them is key. It revealed the path of Chinachara, or Vamachara. The core understanding shared was that things that might degrade or bind a person in other paths, things associated with worldly pleasure or impurity, could actually be used as powerful tools for spiritual ascent when done correctly. With intense discipline, seriousness, and as a genuine sadhana, a spiritual practice, not just indulgence.
And this unconventional approach, it led Vashishta to success, finally.
It did. After understanding and learning this path, Vashishta returned to Kamakya. He performed the Pancha Tatva Puja of the deity. That's a ritual involving 5 specific elements, often including offerings like purified alcohol, meat, fish, and others. And through this method, he attained siddhi, spiritual accomplishment, specifically the siddhi of Tara, another powerful goddess form at the nearby site of Karapith.
Wow.
So the material uses this story to explain why Pancha Tatva Puja, including these specific offerings like bali, sacrifice, meat, fish, purified alcohol, why it's still performed openly at Kamakya. It's presented as the form of worship that she truly loves and responds to most profoundly.
So Vamachara isn't just one way to approach her. The sources say it's actually her preferred domain.
The material is quite categorical on this point, yes. It emphasizes that Tantra texts state this repeatedly. She
Hmm.
loves Vamachara. Now, other methods of worship are considered valid, absolutely. They can bring results. But this specific path is highlighted again and again as what she truly favors.
Okay. Given the depth and, frankly, the intensity of this path, how does an average person or maybe a householder approach worshiping Kamakya? The material offers some practical guidance here, right?
It does, yes. It provides a few accessible starting points. The easiest mention is simply reading the Kamakya Stotram, which is a beautiful hymn in praise of the goddess. Just lighting a simple lamp, a diya, perhaps keeping her photo, or a yantra, that sacred geometrical diagram represent her energy.
Yeah.
And visiting the Kshetra, the sacred precinct itself, is also considered very, very important.
What about visiting the temple? Are there specific things to know, etiquette to follow, given what you've said about Vamachara?
Yes, and the material stresses this.
Yeah.
Have some understanding of the place's nature before you go. Kamakya is fundamentally a Vamachara kshetra. That's its core identity according to these texts. So offerings like meat, alcohol, other substances associated with this path, they are done openly. It's part of the traditional shastrically approved worship there. The guidance is really clear. You shouldn't be shocked. Don't approach it with a sort of moralistic judgment, because to do so is seen as disrespectful to the deity's preferred method of worship in that specific powerful location, like Bali, sacrifice, for instance. It's a part of the process there. You are absolutely not required to participate or give Bali yourself, but you must not criticize it. The material even warns that criticizing this established shastric method could actually have negative repercussions for the person doing the criticizing.
Right. So respecting the local tradition as something stemming directly from the spiritual texts and the deity's nature, what's the basic recommended etiquette then for a visitor just wanting to pay respects?
The material recommends going with reverence, obviously. Having darshan, that sacred viewing of the main deity in the sanctum. Doing jala sparsha, touching the sacred water or just dipping your fingers in. Performing pradakshina, which is circumambulating the main temple. Finding a quiet spot to sit and meditate or even just sit quietly and try to connect. And reading the Kamakya Stotram while you're there. That's a good basic approach.
Okay. And for someone looking to go deeper, beyond basic visits or reading the stotram, what's the path described then?
Well, deeper tantric upasana, that committed ongoing practice, it typically requires diksha initiation,
Right.
or at least guidance from someone who is knowledgeable and, importantly, established on the path. It's not something usually undertaken lightly or alone. But the material does note something interesting. Because Kamakya is the source of all forms, you can worship her as any of the Mahavidyas.
The 10 great wisdom goddesses, like Kali, Tara.
Exactly. Kali, Chandi, Tara, Tripura Sundari, and so on. If you have received a mantra upadesha, that's the instruction or initiation for one of those specific forms, worshiping Kamakya through that form is considered perfectly valid because she's understood to embody all of them. The material even adds that as you progress deeper in your practice, she might subtly guide you towards the Mahavidya form that's most suitable for your specific nature, your destiny. There's also a little note about her loving secrecy, particularly at the higher stages of practice, something to keep in mind.
Interesting. And does the material suggest a particular approach for this deeper sadhana? Maybe for a householder or someone just starting out on that committed path? Consistency seems key.
Absolutely. Consistency is heavily emphasized. For initial sadhana, or for a householder wanting to progress, the recommendation is start with a stotram, or a guided mantra. And critically, visit the kutra consistently. That physical connection is important. A key practice suggested is visiting at least once a year, maybe for 4 or 5 days. And during that visit, really engage. Do mantra sadhana right there, maybe aiming for a specific number of malas, like 100 rounds of japa per day. Perform pradakshina, maybe arrange for a Bali puja to be done on your behalf. The emphasis is strongly on repeating the same practice consistently over time. Focused, consistent effort is described as far more powerful, far more fruitful than trying lots of different things sporadically. Patience, discipline, consistency. They're highlighted as crucial virtues on this path.
That makes sense. The material also mentioned something about the water from Kamakya, didn't it? A specific practice involving the jal.
Yes, there's a fascinating detail there about the sacred water, the jal, from Kamakya. Bringing this water back home, mixing it with Ganga Jal, sacred water from the Ganges, in a specific ratio. I think it mentioned 3.1 or 4.1.
Okay.
Or even just adding a tiny bit of camphor to the Kamakya Jal itself, and then using just a single drop of this mixture for akamana, that ritual sipping of water before starting your mantra japa. This is described as bringing about really miraculous effects. It's a highly recommended practice for those engaged in her sadhana.
Wow. Okay. So beyond the methods of worship, What about the power and the grace of Kamakya herself? What kind of benefits or experiences do the insights suggest one might gain? What are her powers?
Well, given she's the ultimate source of creation, the material indicates that potentially anything can be created or manifested through her grace. She's described as extremely kind, actually, capable of granting wishes. However, and this is significant caution in the sources when wishes are granted, especially if they're complex or maybe not fully aligned with your destiny. A price may have to be paid. The material really stresses that maturity is needed. Maturity in what you ask for and how much you ask for. Generating Shakti, that spiritual energy, through your sadhana is said to be relatively easy comparatively. But maintaining it and applying it appropriately, wisely, that's described as much more difficult, requires real grounding and responsibility.
Right. And does the material suggest she actively interacts with sadhakas, with the practitioners? Do they feel her presence?
Yes, it strongly suggests that direct interaction is possible, and maybe even common for dedicated practitioners. Engaging in regular sadhana is said to bring signs, sometimes quite quickly, maybe within 3-4 months. These signs can indicate if she is indeed the right deity for you, if you're on the right path with her. And the path of Kamakya sadhana itself, it's described as often involving facing really intense challenges, having to fight through them.
Spiritual warfare, you mentioned earlier.
Yes, in a sense. It powerfully builds inner strength, resilience. She tests you, pushes you. But the higher stages of her sadhana, when those challenges are met and integrated, they are described as leading to states of immense bliss, profound joy.
The material even included some personal experiences, didn't it? Illustrating this direct connection, this push.
It did, yes. Very powerful accounts. One experience shared involved a sataka receiving a mantra directly from the deity herself. It was facilitated through a young girl at the temple unexpectedly.
Wow.
And subsequently, this person experienced an intense out-of-body state where they directly perceived the deity within the Garbhagriha, the inner sanctum. Another account describes receiving a uniquely powerful yantra spontaneously, just appearing or being given. This was seen as the deity giving a direct signal, an affirmation, acceptance, and guidance. So these experiences, they really highlight how the material suggests she actively pushes, challenges, and also confirms her presence for sincere sadhakas in very tangible ways.
That's incredible. Now, finally, the sources you shared also touch upon a significant contemporary issue. This ongoing case regarding proposed development, often called the Kamakya corridor case, it seems there are serious concerns there.
Yes, this raises a very important and difficult question about preserving the sanctity of such a powerful ancient place in the face of modern development pressures. The material reports that the matter is currently in the courts. There's mention of the government proposing to involve technical experts, like from the ITTs, to study crucial factors, especially the water flow in the hills, before proceeding.
That sounds reasonable.
It does, but there's also a significant concern expressed by some in the sources. A worry that there might be an underlying intent to maybe find alternative routes or justifications to push the construction through anyway, possibly driven by ego or political considerations, rather than purely focusing on preservation and respect for the site's integrity.
What are the main worries highlighted in the material? What are they afraid will happen with this development?
The core concerns reported really revolve around the potential for irreparable damage to the natural structure of the hill itself, and, most critically, disruption to the natural water flow. The specific water flow that is considered vital to the energy, the very presence within the Garbhagriha.
That specific water source we talked about earlier.
Potentially connected to that, yes.
Yeah.
The lifeblood of the place, in a sense. The material highlights a perceived lack of transparency, maybe even a sense of dishonesty in the planning process, particularly questioning the decision to build directly on the hill rather than utilizing the ample foothill area, especially since initial plans and contracts reportedly moved forward without a thorough independent study of this absolutely critical water flow.
And the potential consequences described if something does go wrong. They sound quite severe in the sources.
They're described in very serious terms, yes. The material states quite clearly that if that specific water flow is damaged or disrupted, it could cause a profound disturbance in the energy of the place, and it's expected to bring about the deity's anger. The repercussions are described as potentially severe, impacting the land itself, particularly the northeast region, maybe India as a whole, and specifically affecting those who are seen as having facilitated or enabled the damage. The gravest outcome feared, the worst-case scenario mentioned, is the deity potentially leaving the place entirely, causing it to lose its sanctity, its immense power, which is presented as a great An irreplaceable loss for all devotees, all seekers, for everyone.
That's heavy. It sounds like the material views, the legal challenge that was initiated, the PIL, as really necessary, perhaps even divinely guided.
It does seem that way. The material firmly states that the public interest litigation, the PIL, filed against the project, is seen by those involved as the best, maybe the only way, to prevent this potential damage. It's even interpreted by some as being directly in line with the will of Ma Kamakya herself, protecting her own space. They mention certain predictions related to the case reportedly coming true, reinforcing this belief. The determination expressed is clear, to continue fighting through the legal system for the Dharma, for the sanctity of the place, regardless of the challenges or the final outcome.
So we've really journeyed through the sources you provided today, explored Kamakhya from her ancient origins, her multifaceted identity, that unique iconography representing her nature and the path, the legends that explain her preferred worship, the practical ways one might approach her, the profound powers and experiences associated with her grace, and even these very current, very real challenges facing her sacred site. It's abundantly clear she is a deity of immense power, depth, and significance, particularly within the Tantra tradition, embodying both that formless source and so many potent forms.
Absolutely. And understanding a deity like Kamakya, with her unique history, her complex symbolism, the specific path of worship she favors, like Vamachara, and the deep, deep connection devotees clearly feel. It truly offers a window into the incredible richness and, yes, sometimes the challenging aspects within these spiritual traditions. It also just highlights the vital importance, doesn't it, of approaching such powerful sacred places and practices with deep reverence, with understanding, respecting the traditions that have sustained them for centuries.
Yeah, it really does. It certainly leaves you pondering the incredible resilience of these ancient traditions and the depth of devotion that inspires people to, well, fight for the sanctity of a place believed to hold such a powerful primordial energy. We hope this deep dive has offered you some valuable insights into Kamakya, got you thinking. And we're curious, have you ever visited the Kamakya temple yourself? Is it somewhere you've been? Or are you perhaps planning a visit, maybe even thinking about going during the time of the Ambubachi Mela, that unique annual period at the Kshetra? Let us know what you thought of this exploration, your experiences, your plans, and if you found this deep dive interesting, if it was valuable, please do like and share it. And definitely subscribe to the channel Tantra for more explorations of complex, fascinating topics like this one. Finally, maybe something to leave you with. Consider the profound paradox at the heart of Kamakya's nature, as presented in these sources. She's described as both the absolute source of all creation, right? The formless potential. And she's a deity specifically associated with intense spiritual warfare, with detachment, with demanding, sometimes unconventional practices. What does this inherent duality, this paradox, tell us about the nature of divinity itself, and maybe about the demanding, transformative challenges inherent on the path to actually realizing it? Something to think about.